art is only lazy if the artist is lazy, but the medium itself has nothing to do with it. And great artists will never be lazy because they're passionate about what they do.
How are people reacting or feeling towards AI-generated art in comparison to how people would react to going to a gallery and seeing paintings from different eras in the world of art? Have you observed anything interesting?
All these errors and hallucinations from art, they give you new inspiration. It's kind of like painting on a canvas that is always moving at the same time and changing the colors and the patterns, and you have to like figure out how can I work with that. But because of that, you can come up with some very, very interesting new solutions. If you have a cookbook and the ingredients, doesn't mean it tastes good. You still need to try it a couple of times to get better until you get a really good cook over time by doing it 100 times, not just one time.
You have a very cool background.
Thank you. It's also AI generated.
It looks pretty realistic though.
A lot of people ask me if this is my real room or not, so yeah. So today's guest is Olivio Sarikas. Olivio is a conceptual artist and a YouTube educator. He creates tutorials of how to use different AI tools in the world of design and has them online on his YouTube channel, which I think our viewers should check out. And I think I'm really looking forward to this conversation because of his approach of design and the integration of design with the world of AI and how to kind of not fear the tools that are already in existence or going to exist in the near future when it comes to the world of design and content creation.
Absolutely. Olivio is one of the premier YouTubers covering the cutting edge of AI tools for design and media production. His YouTube channel, which is just his name, Olivio Sarikas, is an absolute necessity if you're trying to keep pace.
Absolutely.
With the incredible, breathtaking pace of innovation in this field of AI tools for production. So we are very much looking forward to this conversation.
Yes.
We are delighted to have Olivio as a guest on our new podcast covering the intersection of AI and design and media education, specifically as an expert, an obvious expert in how to use and apply these tools from your incredible channel that has so many thoughtful, in-depth videos. I wanted to start off by just asking you, how did you get so good at this stuff?
So thank you very much for having me on the podcast. Hello, everybody who's listening. So I'm Olivio. I have a YouTube channel teaching about AI tools, mostly for image generation, video generation, a little bit sound generation. And my background originally is that I studied fine arts in Munich and then also in Austria, in Vienna, where I'm living right now. And that gives me a good background of understanding the artistic concept, the changes in culture, philosophical concepts, stuff like that. And that helps me explain things, give people a creative perspective on how to use tools. Even though most of my tutorials stay to the technical part, I can still explain to them, for example, what makes a good image or why is a video interesting from the composition, from the colors, things like that. I love teaching people. So that's just something I enjoy doing. But I also think I have a good knack for make complex subjects simple to explain them, because one of my tasks is to explain it to my audience in a way where after 10 or 15 minutes, they have something they can use, they can follow that path and get a nice result that they can achieve themselves in that amount of time. And I want to inspire people who have a enthusiasm for art, but they might not be professional with art, so that they get a bit of understanding what is art, but also how to use these tools in an easy way so they can progress on their own way. So that's my main focus for that.
Yeah, so that leads naturally into a question about how these tools are democratizing design and production. Maybe you can speak to that, because as you said, it's, my own observation is, for example, and maybe you agree with this, but like just to even do mediocre stuff in Photoshop takes months and months, if not years to, and the same thing with After Effects is even a steeper learning curve. And so to your point about making this accessible to people who may not have that background, what do you think about this phenomenon of democratization of design tools?
Right. So when we look at this, historically, there are interesting events that led to modern art. For example, one is very simple thing is just the creation of industrial colors that are made in a factory. You can buy them in a tube. And that allowed artists to go outside and paint different things and paint the real life. So immediately art changed, where people went to factories outside or go to farmers and just paint them and do what they do in their everyday life. Then you have photography that also changed art, where the simple representation of just painting very realistically wasn't a task anymore for artists. So they thought about, what is art actually if it's not representation? If we just don't paint kings or gods, what else can we do? So they looked into themselves and thought about, of course, the first parts like expressionism, impressionism, a lot about expressing your personal emotion. So technology is changing a lot of that. Then afterwards, you have industrialization of reproduction for print, for example, that can make thousands of images every day. And Andy Warhol really used that with his prints and making design art. So a lot of that really changed what art is. Now, this is setting people free from their ateliers, setting people free from kings, setting people free from reproduction of images. That already helps a lot. But what one thing technology so far couldn't really do is to set you free from style and also from the skill limits. And that is what AI can do, because you can basically create in any kind of style you want, even if it's like a past style, or you can come up with new styles, train the models in them. And then also you don't have a skill limit of what you can do, because a lot of that, for example, with films, the color grading, finding the people, all the lighting, all these things takes not just one person who's really good, but a whole team of people who are really good. And now you can just do it on your own. So you're set free from all these limitations. That means you can go after any kind of idea you want. The new limitation maybe, or the new problem maybe might be that, of course, now it's very easy to create something. So you have to think about, what can I do when everything can be done a million times every single day? But we already had that problem with photography. We had that with printing. We had that with video. So we already have experience on how to break through and create something new and inspirational from technology that can reproduce itself millions and millions of times, right? So we have certain understanding of that, but of course, AI puts a new twist on that by being way, way, way more powerful than any of these technologies.
The ability to do any kind of style is a fascinating thing. Because for me, I can't illustrate, but I do lots of projects that my projects have lots of illustrations. So for years and years, I've worked with artists, and I've spent a lot of time writing creative briefs, describing what I want, giving lots of feedback on art, looking at artist portfolios, assessing them, hiring them, and so on. And that's one thing that really stands out to me when you use Midjourney, for example, is that it's like an artist that can do any style, which is a completely unprecedented thing. The very best artist, usually, the very best, most talented artist has a specific style that took them 15 to 20 years to develop. And that's what they can do. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit. It's a crazy thing for me, is this new thing where you can do any style.
Right. Yeah. It's actually also, when you look at how we use, or how people become famous in art in the different art areas, they are usually famous for one thing and then kind of locked down to that one thing, because people either don't believe they are multi-talented, or people or the artists themselves don't have the time or the skill set to do multiple things. So it's actually very locked down in a lot of different areas of what people can achieve in their lifetime. But of course, they have a lot more ideas than that, and they have a lot of skill set behind that. So they could do more with that, but we just can't, because it's very, very hard to get the very high amount of skill you need. And then also, people just you're kind of locked down by, okay, for example, you're a gallery artist. They expect from you to paint in that specific style. because it sells well, right? So now, because technology is changing, culture can also change, and we can open up and allow any kind of style, and they can explore any kind of way they want to tell a story, they want to express themselves. And the interesting thing with AI is also, it's not just that you are free from style, but it can mix styles, it can create things that we have never seen before in that way, and also explore very strange things. So a lot of things that are not intended by AI, they are mistakes at the moment, give that a very dreamlike quality with videos, also with images, something we've never seen before, but it feels very interesting. And it also feels kind of like a little bit like home, because we know this kind of feeling from our dreams, but it's a new world to explore. So there's a lot of new things that can be explored with that. And of course, the people who have the very best skill are the ones who get up the most out of that, because they already know how to play with that, and now they can push it even further. But I also think that this will kind of change who is in lead in the different creative fields. For example, if you think about film, you had film with no sound before, and you had very famous actors, and then suddenly sound came around, and they realized, oh, I'm a good actor, and my voice isn't good. So they changed, and other people became famous as actors because they had both the good acting and the good voice. And AI can also do that, where people who are want to create in the old style, basically doing everything by hand, might still be interesting in the future. There will be a lot of fans for that too, but to be able to work with all this variety that AI throws on you is its skill on its own. It's not that easy, right? It's also interesting, for example, I know a lot of colleagues who are not so good with social media, and you can immediately see today that being good with social media and marketing yourself to become famous as an artist and achieve something is kind of a skill set you need, especially if you're from the entertaining arts like music and things like that. You kind of need to also build a following there, or an actor, things like that. They need to have a couple of 100 million followers as a star to actually reach out to them, right? And not just do a film and go home. That's not anymore how it works, right?
Have you observed any reactions to AI art? Like how are people reacting or feeling towards AI generated art in comparison to how people would react to, like going to a gallery and seeing, like paintings from different eras in the world of art? Have you observed anything interesting?
Right. So, of course, there's different groups there. So a lot of people don't like AI, especially people who come from the arts and trained all their lives to learn the skills. And now somebody presses a button and has a really nice image or a really nice video. So they are not a fan of that. And a lot of their arguments is, but what about the process of creating art? Which I completely understand, that an artist in that way is about the process of doing things and actually painting for weeks on one painting to create that. The process is where their heart is, basically, and then afterwards they set the work free. And I would say with AI, it's maybe the other way around, where you create something and the process that happens afterwards is a lot of what the AI work is, because the way it works in social media and reacts in the public and the kind of echoes it creates afterwards is a big part of the artwork itself today. So it kind of like also turned around, and you kind of need to be a kind of a person who is also in the public with their work and with their intentions. So I think that's interesting. But also from people who work with AI intentionally and like that, they have a lot of interesting ideas on how to use it, because we have now a medium that does kind of what you want, but not really. So you have to work around that. But at the same time, all these errors and hallucinations from art, they give you new inspiration. So basically, it's kind of like painting on a canvas that is always moving at the same time and changing the colors and the colors and the patterns. And you have to like figure out, how can I work with that? But because of that, you can come up with some very, very interesting new solutions. And of course, another element is in the AI art scene, let's call it like that, is this question of, okay, what is art and what is actually human art compared to AI art? Because of course you could also say an AI can create that stuff on its own. So where is the human factor in art? So that's a very interesting thing to figure out. And it's, I think, the first time maybe in history where we are actually questioned in our being of who we are, not just thinking about ourselves as philosophers, but an outside, not actually intelligence, but a reflection or like a potential intelligence in the future is questioning us on what makes us actually human, what makes us actually special, and why is our art better than other art, right? And to figure that out is a very interesting way to go into the future with artistic works.
As you say, the reason why there's this massive anti-AI movement online, it's almost like a third rail. You know, sometimes you don't want to share a thing because you know you're going to inevitably encounter that cohort that are kind of perpetually grumpy about the whole thing. And what they're grumpy about, as you clearly articulated, is that, you know, this is supposed to be hard. Talent is supposed to be rare. This process is supposed to be very difficult. So that there's a moat that you developed in spending whatever it was, 10 or 15 years becoming great at 3D graphics, learning a gnarly piece of software like Cinema 4D, becoming an expert level of After Effects. All of that is kind of very much threatened.
Right. On the one side, I can understand their anger because, of course, you can't deny that a lot of AI is trained on their works that the companies have just downloaded from the internet, and then the styles can be recreated by using their names. And now, of course, the companies try to go against that by training the AI actively to not be able to use these names or recreate people's faces from famous people, stuff like that, to kind of protect that copyright. So I kind of understand that direction. But also, of course, being upset about having learned all these skills and then now suddenly being drowned in all the AI generations that often might not be up to the quality in an artistic way. So they look very nice from the quality they have, but then they're not very creative artistically from what they bring. So, for example, if you go on Pinterest, there is like a complete flood of AI stuff. So you can't actually find anything that's actually truly creative out of that because just everybody posts their stuff, right? So, but that is a problem I think that we can cope with on a technological level, just we do with, for example, social media, where on YouTube every minute, hours and hours of content is uploaded, but most people will never see that because the algorithms just present the stuff that people actually want to see rather than things they have never been uploaded to that. So that I think we can figure out. But of course, art is just changing with that. But art has always changed and people have always been upset about that. So when you go back in history and look at any kind of new technology, people had demonstrations and burned down the factories and all these kind of things because they were upset about, oh, now someone can make shoes, for example, in France, that we did before by hand, and now a machine makes like 1,000 shoes every day and I'm out of a job. But that's just how it is. But one thing I always point out to people is that if you look back to these days, we had way less people on planet Earth. We had maybe 1 billion, let's say. Now we have 8 to 9 billion, but most of them have a job, even though we have computers, we have internet, we have industrialization, we have robots in factories who create a lot of stuff. We still need a lot of people. They might do different things now, but we still need a lot of people in all of these processes. So there will always be people needed. And with design and art, I think it's always a special thing because, let's face it, out of the millions of artists you had back in France, there's only one Picasso, there's only one Van Gogh, there's only one Andy Warhol, right? So as it's just, it's not easy to get up to the top and actually change history and be part of that big artistic movement, right? Even though everybody tries, everybody does art, which is okay. That's also needed. That's the everyday culture that is created, right? And there will always be need for that, especially for the unique human perspective, because that's overall, I think, even with all these like ideas about what AGI can be, we will always be interested in what other people do, no matter if AGI can do it or not. We want to see the life, the suffering, the thought, the love, the passion of another person, not of a robot, because that's just a machine, right?
I wanted to come back to this thing that you said earlier about AI is like painting on a moving canvas. I guess I'm paraphrasing what you said, but that's a really cool insight. And that's also been something that I have observed in following this really since I think we really kind of heard about generative AI and what its capabilities were, I think in the fall of 2022, at least for me. And then beginning in early 2023 is when I started to really get into it. And just in that period of time, it's changed so much. And it's an incredible moving target where it's very difficult to achieve expertise in a thing, and you don't even know if you should spend that much time because you know it's going to change. So maybe you could just speak to that phenomenon of this incredible pace of innovation in the field and how you deal with that, what you've observed and how you might deal with that.
Again, I think we can learn a lot from history. If you think at the beginnings of modern art, there is like big art movements and very big innovations in art that happened in the lifetime of one artist and also created by one artist, different artistic movements, different huge innovations and changes in art. So we already have historical precedent where stuff is moving very fast. To be honest, the difference back then probably was that it was just interesting for the artists themselves. So even though, for example, you have big names like Picasso and such, when they were young, they were famous, but they had a very limited impact on society. Not everybody was going to galleries or being in museums or even other movements. Like, for example, you have the punk movement was a big movement, but how many people have actually been themselves punks or been to concerts and stuff like that? It's big in history, it's big in media, but it probably was pretty small back then in society itself. So that is probably one of the biggest changes with AI is that everybody can participate and it's impacting all the areas at the same time. And because of that, it's a huge change. And this is also a little bit in certain way a top-down revolution because if you look at the classic revolutions we had in art and culture, they come from the edges of culture, from the poorest areas of town, from people who wanted to be outside of society, from punks and hippies and all kinds of people who had their own communities on the edge of society. But now you have billionaires with big pockets and they create all these AI models and they bring it into all kinds of companies and build all kinds of products around that. So this is kind of going into another direction, coming from the top down to the rest of society, and society can participate, which is nice. That they kind of, you have to kind of phrase it like that, give us the opportunity to play with a lot of that for free. Like, for example, ChatGPT, you can just use like one of the most powerful language AIs for free most of the time. That's pretty crazy to be able to do that. Yeah, it has a very huge impact on culture on a different dimension. Sorry, by the way, can you rephrase the question? I think I forgot the question itself. Sorry, I got a little bit off track.
No, I actually really appreciate your understanding of history and your ability to kind of put everything in historical context. You seem to understand. I think you keep making very interesting analogies to earlier artistic movements like punk, like Impressionism in the late 19th century in France. I think that's very helpful to put things in historical perspective and to have that historical literacy. But yeah, the question specifically I was asking is about this crazy rate of innovation that we've seen since the explosion of generative AI and the inability to kind of keep pace with these tools. Even if you try, I mean, you're like a super duper expert. And I think even people who are really deep into the tools, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
Like it's just a new thing. And so like, how do you build competency? How do you keep track of this? Maybe you could speak to that a little bit, just that rate of innovation and how you keep track of it.
So that rate of innovation right now is, I guess, a problem for a lot of people because it's just moving way fast. And you can also see it even for YouTube creators like myself. It's you have to basically at this point like pick your niche because there is so much AI, so much different tools out there. You can't know about all of them and what their potential is. And they also became very specialized, for example, with agentic AI, and then you can combine it with APIs and they can do tasks for you and stuff like that. You need to have a good amount of knowledge on how to set all of that up and have it run in the background on servers, or maybe set it up on a server, things like that. It becomes fairly technical in that area. That's why I mostly stick to image and video generation, because that's where I have my main knowledge about why it works and how it works, also artistically. But even there is like huge innovations and huge fast movement forward. So you really have to stay on top of what is going on. A lot of it you can do by just looking at what your favorite creators are doing, or just following some people on X to see what kind of experiments they are doing, because they are posting every day different experiments on the different AI tools and their abilities, or compare them. There's a lot of comparison tools out there also. The good thing is most of the AI stuff is either free or fairly cheap to do. So you can do your own experimentation. And for example, if you're a indie filmmaker, you can just go and get maybe one or two of these AI tools. Sometimes they have unlimited creation for their plan, which I think some plans is about like, let's say $80 per month for unlimited generation. So that's fairly cheap compared to the camera equipment you need. And then you can try out not just these tools, but also figure out how can you tell stories with these new tools.
Do you see that AI-generated art might have a place in the professional art world where people would actually buy AI-generated art just like they would buy paintings or sculptures?
If they see the value in it and that it's collectible to them, I think they do. Because in the past, we had, for example, found footage where people will just find something, I don't know, on a pile of trash and then create a story with it and say, hey, that's art now. So like, for example, the famous pissoir. So there you go, that's art. And it's not created by the person. They just signed it with a fake name. And now it's art history. So the value of an artwork doesn't come from how it was created or who created it. Like you can be an artist and go to there's like art factories basically where you say, this is my idea, can't create it for me. And they will do that for you. And then you just put it in a gallery. So who created it is not really part of what makes art art. It's more about a deep understanding of culture, of art history, of philosophy, and then adding to that global discourse of what art is and what you want to present with that, right? And I think AI has not just a genuine way to create something we've never seen before, but also AI creates probably one of the biggest philosophical, artistic, even moral challenges we have seen in a long time in human culture. So I would say, especially like in the West, where, let's face it, we don't have too many problems in our life. We have a pretty good life. This is now a topic you can actually dig into and say, hey, this is really a big challenge. We want to talk about what we do. We want to do something about that. And you can go with it, you can go against it, you can do anything with AI and still be interesting about that. You know, you can even attack all their art styles, anything you want, you know, so yeah.
There's this misconception that, art generated by AI is lazy, but as someone that has and is still trying to figure out Runway and how to generate, like text to video prompts, it's not easy, so like there is value in that skill set, I think. And whatever art or like, footage or videos or images that are generated by it, it is a result of some sort of labor. It just depends on the expertise of the person that generated that artwork.
If this argument is coming from artists, it's very strange and divisive, I feel like, because it doesn't make sense in the context of art. And if it's coming from other people, it has always been said about art. You go to a museum, people say, oh, my child can paint that. So that's the same argument of being lazy, of being unskilled, of being dumb, because people don't understand what the image is that they are looking at and what the message is. Or also people who just put, like the thing where the guy glued a banana to the wall in an art exhibition, in this art show. And people say, oh, that's not art. Oh, he showed them how stupid art is. But basically, showing art how stupid it is exactly what art is about. So this is a very good artistic work because it is opening eyes, and that's what art is doing. So even though maybe, I don't even know, but even if it was a demonstration against art, it created art by doing that. So it just didn't work, right? It was a very interesting work. I really liked that work to do that. And also kind of like it's interesting that he used the banana, by the way, because there was an artistic graffiti artist in the past who used to spray paint bananas on the outside of galleries he really liked. So kind of like going full circle, kind of, right? The critique of art coming back with a banana again in another way. So I don't think AI art is lazy. It can be lazy. There's a lot of stuff that I see online that I don't like, especially all these kind of like fake ads that we have now on social media that are created with AI. But if you use art intentionally, the medium doesn't matter. It's only about the idea. So art is only lazy if the artist is lazy, but the medium itself has nothing to do with it. And great artists will never be lazy because they're passionate about what they do.
This practical consideration of design and education, in other words, people who want to get work, well, for me, I'm a college professor teaching design and production. And for me, on the one hand, it's the most exciting time. It's the most rewarding time ever to teach creative media, because all of a sudden I can get right to the good part. In class, I can show really cool stuff really quickly, as opposed to grinding it out for trying to teach them Photoshop or After Effects fundamentals for weeks and weeks and weeks before we can do something mediocre. So, but at the same time, though, what is going to be, what are the implications for the job market? How are hiring managers at design studios, for example, evaluating portfolios? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Like I said before, with all of these computer and industrial revolutions we had in the past, we still now have more employees than we ever had before in history. So machines doing stuff for us didn't really replace us so far. On the other hand, if you would really imagine AI can do anything at all, which I don't think we will see anytime soon, we are still a society, we are still a culture, and we still have rules and rights and politics. And they say, well, sorry, we still need people to be a society and earn their income. But also for the companies, that's important, because if you replace every single person in the world with an AI, who is buying the stuff you create? Why are you making millions of cars if nobody has a job to buy these cars? So even the companies who want to maybe replace some part of their people, of their employees with AI, they still need customers afterwards. So they still need to think about, okay, we need to enable people to have money, and we need to a society to be around, to be a company in, because they can't just exist in the void. Also, politics has to be based on the will of their voters. So they have to figure out how can we make society safe and well and prosperous for our voters, so it's a good society. And you see it today. Today we have a lot of jobs that can be done by a machine, and still they're done by people. On the one hand, because there is unions and there is rights that keep the people in the job. But also on the other hand, because in a lot of ways, a human is cheaper and easier to, it sounds wrong now, but easier to maintain than a machine, because a machine breaking down that is very expensive is very hard, and replacing a machine to do something the machine is not built for is also very expensive. So often it's just easier and cheaper to have a human learn the skill, do that stuff, and then if there's something new coming around, they do some extra learning and then they can do it. Because we are way, way more versatile than that, So I don't know if there is I don't see, I see a lot of replacement for old things to happen, but that always happened, like the car and the horse carriage, that kind of thing. But then also new jobs coming around. And you can see right now that even AI is amazing. We still need a lot of, for example, data to be fed in it, for the models to be trained. I read a report on how AI is used in companies where they said, if an AI is just like connected to the company via an API, often doesn't work, because you can do it for a simple task, like, for example, summarizing a PDF or writing an email for you. But if anything is more complex and you work on a complex project for multiple weeks, the AI can't like keep up with that, and it doesn't understand the complexity, and it also doesn't integrate in the tools and in the workflows they already have in their company. So they can't do it. So if they want to do it, what they need to do is either they work with a smaller outside company that is training processes and models for them and integrating it with software into the API so it can do that, or they train the models internally. But both of that means you need a ton of people to train all these models, build all these APIs, build all the software to interact with that, train your teams on how to work with the AI. So there's a lot of information and learning and training that needs to be done in the future to keep AI around. It's probably going to be cheaper and more efficient, but it doesn't mean you need less people to do the same thing.
That's the point. I mean, anyone who uses these tools kind of runs into that issue. I think Dwarkesh Patel, you might have seen his AI podcast. It's quite good. And that's a point I saw him making repeatedly, which is the context window, right? The lack of memory of the cutting edge LLMs. And if you use them and you're used to using them, you encounter this issue where it's 51st states, and I have to once again feed you the data. I have to once again explain this project to you. And that gets annoying eventually because it's like talking to an employee who's a brilliant employee, but every single time that you meet them, you have to reintroduce yourself. And it's like, it becomes Groundhog Day or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's really irritating. So, but that is a limitation of the state of the art right now. And that might change at some point. And the context window and the memory issue might be solved. So, but coming back to it, when you watch a movie like did you see Bad Guys 2 just came out? It's really, really stylish animated movie. And Elio, I have little kids, so I watch every animated movie. Elio just came out, the new Pixar movie. And if you watch the credits, they go on and on and on, right? The credits go on for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and you see all these people doing all these little tasks. And sometimes I look at the credits and I'm wondering, what did that person do? I want to know what that job was. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? I mean, are those jobs going to go away? I mean, all those tiny little jobs that we see when we watch the credits for a Pixar movie?
Personally, I don't think so, because the things we will do in the future with AI are probably going to be way, way more complex than anything we're doing now. So especially if you look at film, like at the beginning of film, you had a camera and then everybody was acted out in front of the camera like a theater play, and that's it. It was live and that's done. You cut it a little bit, that's the movie, not even sound, nothing. So that was really simple. And then the more technology you got, the more complex it got, the more people you need, the more experts and specialists you need, and different softwares and everything. So now if you look at the movie, there is not even a set, there is nothing. It's just green screen and green people in green outfits, and they do everything in post with rendering. On the one hand, a lot of stuff has been replaced by technology for sure. But at the other hand, the reason why they do everything with green screen and then technology afterwards is because the camera shots and what they do with these animations is so complex. You can't do it with classic practical effects where you build a model of a spaceship and then you can have the camera fly behind, like move behind that model a little bit so it looks like it's flying. It's in no way compared to the crazy like airship battles that we have today with camera perspective inside the cockpit, outside, flying, and all kinds of things they're doing with the camera, and it's extremely dynamic. So that's why it has been replaced with 3D, and it's going to be more and more extreme like that on what we can do with these kind of art forms, and also to have more output of these kind of creations, right? So in that regard, I think we need a lot more people, and it's becoming more complex rather than less complex. We have to see how good that works and how good AI can be integrated in that. But for example, one thing that's really interesting about our human culture, so to speak, is that we do things and we understand things on a non-spoken level where we even ourselves don't know why it's happening. It's just happening, and suddenly there is a new meme, there is a new like cool thing that is happening. Everybody is completely into it, and you have no idea why that's happening. Like the dabbing, like this kind of thing, and people are just like, everybody's doing it. You have no idea why, even if people can't explain why it's cool. So that is something only we, I think, can figure out. And AI, I don't see AI at any time in the future being able to just figure that out. Maybe, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years in the future, it really understands why this is going on. But even now, if you take the very best people in Hollywood, the very best skilled people, they can't often figure out how to tell a good story, make a good movie. So I don't see AI replacing that skill anytime soon, if even the most skilled humans with their vastly more powerful brains can do it.
I wanted to bring it back to maybe something practical that we could advise young people who are, right now in designs, in film school, in art school, how to prepare for this crazy world. You mentioned earlier how different skill sets are being rewarded, which I think is a very good insight. And, the ability to, rather than trying to work your way up in the studio system, which would have been perhaps the dream of a film school student in the 1970s, right? That doesn't seem that relevant right now when you have these tools at your disposal. So, and instead the skill becomes, as you mentioned, social media. And then I would argue kind of self-learning, the ability to grok these tools quickly, to integrate the tools. How much can you do by yourself with the laptop and a small team? And then, as you mentioned, the AI slop phenomenon, which to me, I feel like the antidote to that is creative direction, which is taste, right? So those are some things that are percolating in my mind. Like, how would you advise, again, students in art school, film school, design school right now on what skills to learn and prepare themselves for the future?
To be honest, I think right now, if you look at, for example, what is happening in Hollywood, we have a major industry where a lot of artists and studios have been bought up by the big companies like Disney, for example, and they are very, very risk averse about what they want to do. So we have all these like movie universes with very boring films, popcorn films that you can like just fall asleep to, with extremely high budgets, and nobody wants to invest in high risk movies because everything is owned by these very big companies. So we are basically right now at a time in movie creation that is kind of like the Tarantino time, where small independent artists can create something with a very low budget that is way, way better, that people really want to see, and just put it on YouTube or any kind of other streaming service so people can actually watch that. And then also we have crowdfunding and all these kind of things. We have Patreon, all kinds of ways to get funded, to sell tickets online, things like that. So there is a way more interesting angle right now, and the chance in history, in time, to create something that's uniquely your own. And AI is coming in at that specific time to free you from all the limitations of skill, of budget, of time, or needing a huge team or stuff like that to create whatever you want. So I would say a good way to do things is, first of all, rewatch the crazy old stuff you have with Cronenberg and The Shining and all these kind of things, all the kind of madness that go on in the independent movie time, where people really thought outside of the box to get some really new ideas and not try to create the next Hulk or stuff like that. But then also at the same time experiment with AI to see how far can I push the limits and how far can I go with the limitations, and maybe especially use the limitations of AI to create something that is unseen and unheard of in film or in any kind of other art you want to create. For example, with music, you can mix musical styles nobody else has mixed before together and create and experiment with that. You can do like 100 songs every day if you want to, until you find something that's really different. Nobody has ever seen it, and it really works. And I still think if you see quality, if you see something that really touches you and that's amazing, you just know it, you just feel it, that kind of thing is different. So even though there's a lot of AI videos out there and AI music and all the kind of stuff and AI short films, a lot of that is slop. A lot of that is really bad, and you don't need to hear it, and it's really not great because the people behind that often don't have either the skill or the creativity to really bring it across. And then once in a while, there is works that are really great, where people have a good understanding, they have a great skill set, they know how to tell a story, and then create something with AI on a dimension that is either on par with the big movie creation houses like Disney today, or even goes beyond that because the story can be very strange, and exploring the human condition and the future where AI can go with that is a great question. Everybody's wondering about that, and I think right now also people love this kind of otherworld perspective, sci-fi perspective, things like that. If you think about Black Mirror, for example, there's a huge potential to create something like that. And creating something that is eerie and strange with AI and tells an interesting story that explores the human condition and how technology interferes with that is great. Yeah, and then AI really gives you the skills and the tools to play with that. But you need to be a good artist, a good storyteller, and you can't just sit down every day, spend a couple of hours and try that out and try to create something new every day. And that's amazing thing, because back in the day, you can try one idea and you need half a year to get the financing and create it and cut it. Instead, it looks bad because you don't have the people who, for example, can color grade it good enough. And now you can do it in 1 or 2 days and see, does it work? If not, scrap it, start again, doesn't matter. You can make 10 movies in 1 month if you want, like short films, let's say.
It's an incredible creativity unlock.
Definitely. And I mean, I think like what you just mentioned just speaks on how important it is to have the fundamentals of art, the fundamentals of storytelling, all the theoretical concepts that you'd learn in like your first year of pursuing a program of fine arts or film or whatnot, and then utilizing AI to implement these fundamentals in art. I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think knowing the fundamentals is still very, very valuable. You don't need to have the technical skill maybe, but you need to know what if, for example, the different stories that can be told, how to think about art, how to tell a good story. Composition is very important, different camera angles, the colors that you need to use to tell a story. Things like that is very important to understand that, and then you can use it.
And I mean, a lot of like AI tools actually depend on the fundamental language of that craft for you to tell it what you want. So for instance, with Runway, what I've noticed is that you need to use, like terminology and cinematography and like different shot angles, shot sizes, camera movements for it to understand what kind of video you want it to generate from the prompt. And that skill and that type of learning is still very important for you to understand how to use the AI tools that we have out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would also suggest that people really want to do any kind of art with that to go online and buy some of these online courses about how to create that art. They don't have to learn the skill, but the way that people approach the concept of creating that. For example, there's online courses for people who create these concept artworks for movies and video games and stuff like that. How is the world building working? How do you set up a character? What kind of colors do you create to express different kind of emotions? What kind of camera angles would you use to tell different kind of expressions or the action that's going on, what the character is feeling inside? Do you close up to the face or have a wide shot to expose the surroundings, things like that, to tell the story by pulling the people into the story through the things you show them, not through the dialogue you have on screen by having all this kind of exposition. You want to show it through the action that's going on and the colors, the music, things like that. And that is something you still need to learn. AI can't do that for you. It can help you. You can ask AI, how would you do that shot? For example, ChatGPT, it can give you some advice, but you still need to learn how to do it well. It's just like, if you have a cookbook and the ingredients doesn't mean it tastes good. You still need to try it a couple of times to get better until you get a really good cook over time by doing it 100 times, not just one time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was kind of an observation that I had early on, or not early on, but midway through my deep dive into AI tools, was that it really all came back to creative direction, art direction, and taste. So no matter how powerful the tools are, for a student, just to bring it back to teaching, for a student to know why I should choose that shot over that shot, or why I should pursue this concept over that concept, or this character design over that character design, or this style over that style, that is very difficult to teach. Like you said, the LLM can advise you, but realistically, that's like 10 years of design education. It's like a lifetime learning and developing that high level set of instincts.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always good to invest time in that and just read books about that and then watch online courses about that. There's also a lot of online YouTube channels that are about that. I think like one channel is Every Frame a Picture, or something like that. Or another one is about color theory. I'm not quite sure, but they analyze movies. They show you why the colors are used, how they're used, what they used in the composition, stuff like that. And to know that really helps you to create something that sets you apart from the rest that's out there. Because, like I said, most people, they might have interesting ideas, but they don't know how to form them into a good story and then also express it visually or in any kind of other format they want to have. So yeah, these fundamentals you still need. And this is also what I feel like is the most human factor, is because it is so hard to tell a story, even with all of the skill sets. Like, I mean, if you have the money, you can just hire a team and they can make an amazing movie for you. But if you don't know what you want to tell, the team can't really make a good movie. You need to still be a good director, right? So I think a director is a good example of how to use AI, because a director is the only job that the director has is basically prompting his team and telling them, do this, do that, and they do that for you, right? So, but he still needs to know how to be a good director, and that's what you need to learn. I think that's also one of the future things with AI in all kinds of areas, that people need to know how to direct or train or manipulate AI into doing what they want as a specific result.
Directors have a vision, and then they have their team, their crew to convey that vision. And I think, like AI pretty much could be that tool for creatives to utilize that way.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And then like have a couple of accounts like for Runway, for Midjourney, pages like that. Hicksfield, maybe, if you want to have these more like prepared shots to do these kind of like advertisement or cinematic shots, stuff like that. And go into different Discords online. There's a ton of Discord groups, and post the results you have. You can ask people about prompting, about training models, about different tricks you can do. You can build very crazy workflows with ComfUI to create all kinds of things automated, or really experiment with AI to go beyond the borders of what AI can do, and figure that out. But again, like apart from the technical skill of hanging out with all of the AI crowd, is also good to hang out with the art crowd and find some people you can talk about different artistic theories and concepts and philosophies. There's a lot of artists also who wrote very interesting books about their process, or biographies, interviews with artists, who have a good understanding what is going on, why they're doing stuff, and get a feel for that. Because one thing I always realized is people who have an actual art background can create often more deep works than people who don't, because often people don't have that. They more focus on the kitschy, colorful, satisfying art kind of style. They make art because they want art to be beautiful and to be nice to look at and give you a good feeling. And usually let's say actual artists, sounds a little bit strange, but let's say actual artists, what they want to do is to stretch the limits of art and question the human condition and like interfere with culture. They are not making art because they want it to be nice and colorful and make you feel good in your home. They want to question you. What is going on? Where we are going in the future? Is this the right place? Is this the right society? Stuff like that. So asking these questions, interfering with that kind of thing, creates a completely different art, but also makes a different necessity for art, right? Where, for example, the ugly things can become the beautiful things because we can learn from things that might be ugly more because we have never really looked at them in detail, and then also have stories. A house that is breaking down, or a carcass of a dead animal on the road, or a shoe that is left behind after a festival or stuff like that. There's a lot of story in that kind of thing that asks questions and also asks where are we going in the future and how should we rethink society, right? And that's, I think, where art is actually happening, especially the art that lasts, that is going to be interesting 100 years down the road.
There's a quote that I really like that I've come across years ago, and it basically says, "Life depends on science, but the arts make it worth living."
Right. Yes. Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying. I think like when people pursue art as a profession, take away AI, take away like all the technological advancements that we're witnessing. But when they pursue art, I feel like it's very intentional and motivational because they want to do something grander than just, the technical aspect of it. Mm-hmm. There's a commentary that these artists are trying to make through the medium of art.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. There's also an interesting rhythm with new technology where first the new technology gets very overhyped. And I think we are right now in that stage with AI where people promise all kinds of crazy things that it can do. Then, of course, these promises fell short. So it's kind of like dies for a certain time. The funding goes away because everybody thinks like it's just a pipe dream. Nothing's going to come from it. And this is when the actual life of the new technology begins, when the big funding is gone and people have to actually figure out how can we make a product? How can we make money with it? What can it actually do? And where we can build something that is lasting and actually has an impact, a real impact, not just a made up story about, oh, we're going to have the robots are going to do things for us and we're just leaning back and having our non-conditional income. Why? Who wants it actually? So that is the thing we still need to wait for to happen. But you can look back in history and see how was it with other histories. Like, for example, the web, the .com bubble, stuff like that. People overpromised it, everything fell down. And today we use the technology in a way we have never imagined before, right? Nobody thought, hey, the big thing is going to be you make billions of dollars by enabling people to post cat photos and their last coffee on it. We had other ideas for that. And everybody thought, okay, we have internet. It's going to give us all the education. It's doing things for us. Everything is like just a dream world. No, we like to look at just like mindless, like brain rot, as it's called, like all these shorts and stuff. People enjoy that. It might be the lowest of things, but it's what people like, So where things go with technology, we always have to see after some time, but then also people will figure out how to do that. So you can, for example, say with photography, the big age of photography is gone. I don't know about that. But what I see is when I go online, for example, on Instagram, there is millions of people who now are professional photographers with a huge following who love them. And yes, maybe they just photographed their beautiful girlfriend on a beach in Tahiti, but that's what people want to see. So that's okay. If that's what people like, that's it. Back in the day, maybe they liked to go to a theater, so that's their time. And now this is our time. But they are also professional photographers like that. So it's really interesting where technology can go and how it develops. But I would say our society, especially in the Western society, is right now like a dream. We can do whatever we want. We can afford a good life. We use technology to its best potential. You can order something and have it tomorrow. So it all came out in a very nice way in the end, right? Maybe not what we expected, but in a way that it's fitting our time. It doesn't have to fit the time of our parents because that's the past, right? Technology has to go where we are, but you can't figure out what the future is. We don't know what we want in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, what our kids basically want from their life. But that is where AI needs to serve that purpose, right? And that's going to be figured out by after the bubble is basically exploded.
Olivio, it's been a really honor talking to you. And I think this interview has just, we covered so many fascinating topics. And I love your historical relativism, your historical literacy. I think is super, super helpful because people, it's too easy to become, what's the word, too nearsighted and lose perspective. So you bring that perspective you bring is incredibly helpful. And in addition to that, incredible wealth of knowledge and expertise. So thank you so much for your valuable time and your incredible insights.
Thank you, Olivio.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a very big joy to speak to you. And yeah, I had a really good time. Thank you.
That was a fascinating conversation with Olivio, a far-ranging and in-depth conversation. So much that we went into, including just the simple idea of what is originality in this new phase shift of generative AI. We talked about how to stand out in this world of content inflation as well. We talked about the history of art and artistic styles, and we talked about the need for fluency in art history to, in a sense, be able to leverage really the true possibility of generative AI in terms of the fact that Midjourney, for example, can do any imaginable style and how disruptive that is. And then he got into the backlash, the well-known online backlash against generative AI, how, if it is possible, to navigate in the different aspects of that.
And also the importance of learning the fundamentals in art theory and art history in order to become a better artist, whether it's just a traditional artist or an artist that utilizes AI tools for design. He
brought it back to the design fundamentals, and I think Olivio was very versed. Again, I was really impressed by how well versed he was in art history, the history of technology for production, color theory, design theory. He obviously just knew all of that stuff really, really well. We talked about historical relativism, for example. We got into the idea of the skills that people will need to succeed in this. Again, this phase shift we're going through. The fancy word is autodidacticism or self-learning. Very important, obviously, because the pace is incredible, the change here. He talked about it as a moving canvas, I think is an eloquent term. Another concept that I've also talked about is the importance of creative direction or taste. That's going to be more important than ever when you're presented with almost endless possibilities. Then how do you make a decision? How do you know what's better than the other thing?
And also having your unique style as, like a digital artist, and how to have that style be consistent. Because we have a lot of artists from Impressionism era or the Renaissance era that have a specific style that once you look at, a painting or an image, that it pertains to them. So how can we do that as artists and creators in the age of AI while having our own style, our own distinct art, and making us stand out in, a world of endless possibilities?
He emphasized in that sense that it's an incredibly experimental time. Really profound point, actually. At a moment when you can have access to literally any style in the history of design and art and design, how do you do something that's fresh and original? And then finally, he talked about the importance of social media because, again, this concept of content inflation, if everybody can make content, the barrier to entry is so low, it puts more pressure than ever on creatives to stand out.
I think it's beyond social media. It's how to brand yourself as an artist.